I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Aye. there. And if you get a chance to go on the website and check it out, you should, because it's some good stuff. And shout out to Gustavo Garcia and Chris Llewellyn, who put some time in on getting this thing stood up. Can we go to the next slide? Shrek the Musical. So I always try to end on something fun. Last year there was a lot of concern in May whether we were going, the future of the Tualatin High School's musical program was going to look like. I reassured the community that we were going to continue to support the arts, including our theater program. And we have Jane Welch. I didn't want to mess up her name. So our new teacher, Jane Welch, did an outstanding job with the Shrek the Musical. And that guy on the right looks really familiar. He looks a little bit like one of our student reps that is not here right now. But so we got to, so last week there was Shrek the Musical. I went and saw opening night, and they did an outstanding job. The kids are so talented, and it was a really a bright spot at the Tualatin High School community. And if you didn't get a chance to check it out, they're going to have another show, 2 shows this Saturday. There's a matinee, I think, at 2, and then another one at 7. So if you get a chance, go check it out. And then also would love to go check out the Tiger program as well. So just sharing that. And then finally, just to bring this to a close, looking ahead, today you're going to hear some budget updates, and then we're going to continue to give you all budget updates. We're going to hear something from the state in the next couple of days. So just be on the lookout for that. And then I know that there's still is some real concerns in the community around the presence of ICE. And I wanted our school community and our families to know that we have a resource page. If you have any questions or concerns or want to know how the district can be of support for families that are impacted, we have resources available on our website. So that's it for my updates.
Thank you so much. Board reports? Director Miles.
Waiting for my online colleagues. I don't have a ton. I went and saw Shrek. It is very fun and fantastic. And I got to participate on the Bond Oversight Committee. First meeting for that. I am amazed at the team that was put together. They are full of expertise, and really looking forward to seeing that work there, to get to watch the work that's there. They've got a fantastic plan, and looking forward to obviously skilling up, being part of that, and looking at being part of that work going forward. So that's it from me this week.
Before I go, I will just double check our online board members.
I bet it wasn't as fun as the Financial Oversight Committee.
There's Director Jaimes.
Because that was fun. Thank you to all the people that participate in that. That was great. And once again, I am out sick today, so I'm joining in from home. I apologize for not being there. Sick. I say sick again because that kept me from going to the OSBA annual convention that I was scheduled to go for, which really is a big bummer for me. But unfortunately, I don't want to get anybody sick, so I'd rather stay home and heal up.
Director Weston.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm also under the weather, so off camera, but just wanted to say I really appreciate the work to uplift and show respect to Indigenous communities. Thank you so much for that work. And I also want to thank our community for really coming together to look out for our neighbors with food help and donations to clothing closets. I know the one at Templeton's running a little bit short on some items. I also really appreciate the efforts to raise expectations and encourage high attendance that's happening in our district. And as the state contemplates an even tighter budget than typical, because of the way Oregon mirrors our federal tax policy, I hope we can continue to work together, take care of our communities, and prioritize student learning in our district. So thank you.
All right, and I will just end the big thing that I would report on is the OSBA annual conference, which Director Miles did not say anything about, but really she led that show with her team, and it was incredible. And so we were able to attend sessions around new and upcoming policy, Senate Bill 141, board governance, and then the last day there was this roundtable that I had, 17, 15, all these different it was like speed dating, but for all the things you wanted to know every like 20 minutes. And so new board members, sanctuary status, what's happening in DC, student reps on the board. So there was just a lot of information that was so rich, lots of robust conversation. So it's always a wonderful event. There were 500 plus school board members from across the state that were there. So it was a really incredible opportunity to both sit with our sort of Washington County partners, but also kind of look at who else is here, who else is, we're all kind of dealing and managing the same things, but also there's a lot of perspectives in that room that are different. And so it's always just a really wonderful time. So thank you, Director Miles, for all of what you do. The other piece, which sort of ties into that, is just continuing to give a little bit of feedback on the ODE TAC Force TAC group that I'm part of relative to Senate Bill 141. And what was interesting is there was a session about that and had some ODE folks there. And they are getting feedback, and it's pretty much the same feedback from, I think, in every space that they're in, which is we really, as schools, need to really be understanding what those local metrics are looking like, what we are being asked to do, what of these will end up being another version of unfunded mandates, how this really centers on actual student achievement and not just some more data points that really are unrelated to the well-being of our students. And so I think there was robust conversation and a lot of it. And I think that's not the only space they're hearing that in. So we're hoping that on Friday of this week, when we meet we have 3 more meetings, I think, before the State Board of Education meeting, that we will maybe hear some shifts in some of their thoughts on some of that work. I think that's it for me. Thank you. And we have no public comments. So we will go to our first report and discussion item, which is our reports on our SIP presentations that we heard earlier during the work session. And so this is a time where each board member will have 3 to 5 minutes to just sort of give their hot takes, their big aha moments, their appreciations for what they heard from each principal and school that was represented tonight. Anyone dying to go first? Director Jaimes?
Yes, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had the pleasure of sitting with Metzger Elementary, and Jessica Swindle is the principal there. We talked about their new reading curriculum that they are undertaking currently. She mentioned about their partnership with Portland State, which we heard about the other day. A lot of their data process is handled through what they call core review meetings, and so they've got teachers in the room just looking over data, and they've got data sheets that are just focused on each grade level, so kindergarten or first grade, things like that, where they can make decisions based on each individual student, but also at grade level. The thing that they're focusing with this new reading curriculum that they have is that phonemic awareness focus and phonics routines, explicit vocabulary routines, and they're not doing as great in math, but they're also working on that as well through small group instruction and increasing the math number sense, as well as the algebraic thinking of students. When it comes to their multilingual learners, they're ensuring that there's co-teaching going at all levels, or at mostly all grade levels, when it comes to learning how to write. And so that's how they're supporting their multilingual learners. One of the things that they're doing that is not necessarily being done around everywhere else is progress monitoring for those multilingual learners. And so with that, they've got several progress monitoring tools that they're using. She talked about how ice, the presence of ice has been a distraction for a lot of our families, and so they're being very thoughtful on how they are engaging these families, whether it be changing to online meetings or uh, helping them with having access to food, having our FPA as well as other community members doing porch drop-offs. She also talked about a lot of the resources that we're offering as a district, helping them, access notary services for their family preparedness packets, and then rehashing the importance of attendance so that students who miss one day can usually fall behind real quick, and so so they're excuse me, so they want to make sure that they're keeping up with their attendance. In terms of the ish plan, they're doing a great job with their imprint lessons. They're follow it up with intent versus impact and empowering neurodiverse students to be leaders in the school. And so it was really great hearing about everything that they're doing. Much appreciation for what they're doing with their students that are receiving special education services right now. They've got their highest amount of students that are receiving special education services joining them at the kindergarten level, and so this is going to be a challenging year. Especially aggravating is the fact that they've got two learning specialists currently. They should have three, so they're in the process of recruiting another one, but Jessica was very gracious in the fact that the district has rallied around them and provided multiple people for support in the school while they are missing that extra learning specialist. That's it for my report.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go. I had the pleasure sitting with Principal Jerry Nihill, who has been the Mary Woodward principal for 14 years. A lot of what we talked about is they are really working on the CKLA implementation this year, the language arts implementation. And I got to sit in on the curriculum adoption committee last year for that. So I had a lot of information about how that went and a lot of questions about how that was going, just based on all the work that committee did and all of what they were looking for in that selection, and then just really wondering how that all was going. What he was talking about as part of that is that there is a lot of continuity in that planning between schools, which is great because there's also a lot of student mobility between schools. And so he felt like there's some really good systemic planning between all of the elementary schools, especially in that rollout. And he also recognized that, and he put it in this way, the spinning plate of the iReady math adoption that they still got on their radar. So they've got a lot going on, as everybody does. He talked about they don't have a dedicated instructional coach this year. They share one with 2 other schools, and that's a little tough. But they are also able to coordinate with those 2 other schools during their in-services. So that allows that to happen, even though that loss of that dedicated person is tough. I asked how, what kind of professional development they are getting from Amplify, which is the parent company of the CKLA curriculum. And, he talked about the professional development that came with it, but really talked about how their own teachers are really creating the most relevant PD for themselves, and their own teachers are more responsive, more creative, more able to create in context. So he's finding that our own staff is really providing the support that the staff needs, and they are working actively to identify the gaps in the curriculum and filling those in. I mean, this is a building year, and really talked about that. I mean, as one would expect. The teachers are most excited about the authenticity of the stories that kids are reading, the nonfiction, and the cultural responsiveness of the curriculum. And he talked about that. I asked about what are the impactful strategies. They've got a lot of strategies that they are implementing. And he said the decodable readers, that strategy, which was interesting because as I sat at the table with folks who were looking at the different curricula, that was really important last year on the committee. I remember sitting with folks who were like, we really like, if there's not decodable activities, if that does not exist, that kind of thing, like we don't want curriculum that doesn't have that strategy, that does not, introduce decodable readers. He talked about the specific strategies they have for multilingual learners. That was really important to them, and tracking their progress, as well as using a lot of disaggregated data to really just get, in some ways we talked about, is this because of the curriculum adoption, is there some way in which this is a baseline year? I mean, there are some things in which, he doesn't expect a lot of loss or any change, but this is a baseline year for gathering a lot of how is this working. And of course, this will just be really a year-long process. We also talked about making connections with families, which has been difficult with some families not really feeling safe right now, and pulling back a little bit, but they do a lot of outreach and really try and connect with their families, which is so important to them. And of course, as everybody is doing, they are making a lot of efforts to improve and support attendance. And it was really wonderful to see that data that is improving across the board. And that's what we talked about. It was really wonderful to sit with him.
That's fantastic also. Director Weston?
Hi, everyone. I had some user error probably in logging in, so I actually missed that part. But I think I did get the invitation, so it must have been something with my setup.
No worries. All right, so I will round it out with, I was with Principal Tim Gross with CFT. And it's interesting having everybody talk about elementary schools, the 3 of us, because I think one of the common threads was the new curriculum, the CKLA. And a couple of things just around, I think what was interesting is I would really echo that sentiment of, while there is amplified professional development available, he really reported also that between the literacy specialists, the instructional coaches themselves, they were really sort of building some of that. And so I think the approach is really interesting, what CKLA does. And I will be very brief in this, but really instead of just we're doing sounds and now we're doing blends, and it's very just sort of in some ways black and white in what that objective or purpose is. This is really building true academic vocabulary. It's building context around language and those context clues. And so one of the things he mentioned is students are really reading a couple of levels of, like they are being read to, but in class they are getting into texts that are 1 or 2 grade levels above where they are. and really helping kind of decode and break things down as a group. And so one of the examples was, oh, the second graders were learning about Hercules and Greek mythology, but they could really explain because they were getting the context. They could not have sat down and read that story themselves, but with all of this hour that's really devoted to that reading comprehension piece and that sort of contextual understanding of language, they were able to really talk about, as little second graders, this really cool thing that they might not typically get until fifth grade or even middle school. And so that's kind of one of the hallmark differences in this particular curriculum than what we were doing previously. And so I think what will be interesting is this time next year, and even at the end of the next sort of formative testing piece, like how are things going? Are we seeing those growth in areas around comprehension? Are we seeing the things that we would hope we would see? Are there still things that we maybe need to build in that weren't necessarily part of that original curriculum? So that was really exciting. And I think the other piece that's true is we talked about sort of that feeling of disequilibrium that students get, or the productive struggle, and how that's really sort of giving some teachers that as well, which is sort of a healthy, good space to be, but sort of we're learning this along with the kids. We have not taught this curriculum before. And so how do we sort of do the things that we know how to do? And so that kind of led into the discussion around those instructional priorities and how they are not explicitly being sort of showcased in a way this year. He is seeing them embedded in their everyday practices. So do they know that objective or that purpose, or what are those engagement strategies that are being used, which are some of those instructional priorities? It's much more embedded into everything they're doing. And so he's really making sure that this year, some of the constructive feedback is not around the reading curriculum, really getting them used, the teachers and the students used to that before, and really highlighting, wow, these are all these amazing strategies that you're using in your teaching while teaching this new thing you've never done before. So I think that was really cool to see. In terms of the culture climate piece, they have started something, they did their, one of their surveys around belonging. And so the areas that were lowest were students felt like the good behaviors weren't being noticed. Students didn't always treat each other well, and students sometimes were making it, the behaviors were making it hard to learn. And so it really felt like those were all sort of areas where there wasn't peer-to-peer collaboration and interpersonal relationships. And so one of the things they did is, instead of like we had at Durham, right, like golden tickets or the toodles or the gotchas, they really did something now called Wildcat Way tokens. And so every teacher is given 10 tokens a month, but it can't be given to anyone in their class. And typically they're trying to give it to someone like part of a group. And so then that student, and they only get 10 a month, the teacher. So not only are teachers recognizing things that are happening outside their classroom, oftentimes that are collaborative between students, then the sort of process is that student comes into the classroom and gets to kind of say, I earned our class a token. So there's a collective piece. This is what I did to earn it. It's kind of celebrated. And then they put it in a collective like piggy jar. And then that class together, all of those collaborative things that other people in the school are noticing are coming together to earn a prize for the classroom. And I thought that was really wonderful. And it is building that connection between students. And then finally, we talked a little bit around Ish work and how they are really kind of still working that predict, monitor, and reflect, sort of the imprints, restorative practices, that intent and impact. And one of the things that we talked a lot about too is in elementary school, it's rarely sort of nefarious when there is something that happens that requires sort of that Ish process. And so there is a lot of kind of talking things through. And he said rarely, if ever, do students have sort of like a second offense of that kind, because it was sort of done. They didn't know what that word meant. They didn't realize how that felt to somebody else. They heard it somewhere. And so they're really doing a lot of that reteaching, and kids are doing a lot of reporting. A funny anecdote, I'm sure it's fine to say this, is that he did say it's funny because, the older grades, they kind of want to say like bad words sometimes, and students will like never report those, right? But they will always report something that's bullying or hate speech. And so they sort of understand like this is the highest offense that you could possibly do, and that's what I'm going to go tell a trusted adult about. And so, but like, let the swears go, kind of a thing like that. So I thought that was interesting, and that is kind of that whole like reframing and reteaching piece. So I think that's it for me. Yeah, and then we are back after the winter break with our second roundtable. And so we'll have a new, fresh set of schools to talk about. All right, and with that, we will move to the second report and discussion, which is our financial update with Director C.
Good evening, directors, as well as student reps and Superintendent Udo Senata. I am here to present an update regarding the general fund, both wrapping up last school year, giving an update on the current school year, and then a 27-29 outlook related to the biennial budget. All right, as it relates to the general fund, we provided an update to the board in August regarding the 24-25 general fund results. As you may recall, we started last year with a $1 million missed target with our beginning fund balance and completed negotiations with TTEA for 2 years, which led the district to start implementing some cost-saving measures mid-year. Fortunately, just due to the diligence of district leaders in terms of postponing hiring and reducing discretionary spending, we realized some expenditure savings in the amount of about $2 million. And then fortunately in the spring, we really started to receive some good news. This was after the 25-26 budget was put together, but we started to see some favorable trends related to specifically revenue, which you can see as a $2.7 million favorable variance. Throughout the year during the board reports, we noted that we saw favorable results with investments, but specifically during the spring, again, those May and June months, we had good feedback regarding our Medicaid survey work. We also had a favorable 24-25 state school fund reconciliation, and also just because of grants had higher than expected indirect rate charges. That means that while we were originally forecasting to end the school year at our 8% fund balance of $13.9 million, we ended the 24-25 year with a $17.6 million fund balance, which is approximately 10% of resources. So that takes us to 25-26. I'd like to talk a little bit about just themes you may have been hearing, specifically as we hear about quality education model funding and the record-breaking investment in K-12 schools. As we moved from the 23-25 biennium to the 25-27 biennium, we did indeed see a record investment, at least in total dollars, of the state school fund, and that was $11.36 billion. That was an 11% increase from the prior biennium. But as you may recall, K-12 funding out of the general fund has historically declined. So even though we're seeing higher total dollars as a percentage of the state budget, K-12 funding has decreased. I'm going to show a couple slides just to show the relationships of revenue compared to our other costs. So for example, the state school fund, which is the largest revenue source for our district, that our 24-25 allocation was $151.3 million, and that was at a $10.2 billion statewide allocation. When we came into the 25-26 year, we had that $11.4 billion allocation I mentioned, and that was an additional $7 million in revenue. However, when we go over and look at expenses, our total expenses and budget only increased by $1.6 million. You can see that core pay, these are just salaries for our licensed, classified, administrator, and manager staff, increased by about $300,000. You'll see that next line item, though, is PERS. PERS alone increased by about $2.9 million in the general fund, coming in from the 24-25 to 25-26 school year. To offset that increase, other pay and benefits decreased by $2.1 million, and then all other costs including the fund balance designation increased by about $700,000. I'm going to show this slide a couple different times as I talk about the 27-29 biennium. So as you remember, we had a 25-26 general fund budget that with roll-up costs indicated the district had to make about $10.6 million in reductions, and that included 72 FTE. So that's why specifically when you look at such a small increase in core salaries, it's only $300,000 out of a $193 million budget. It's really small. That's why you also saw reductions in other payroll-related benefits that correlated to staffing reductions. So that's just general fund 25-26 big picture. But we had some other developments at the end of the legislative session at the state level, which we needed to counterbalance. So when I met with the board in August, we had some preliminary updates related to federal grants and state and local grants. That's the information on the left. We've since, on the federal side, the Department of Ed actually released those mini title grants. And we have a better outlook on funding. So for federal grants, we were about $145,000 short. Most of those grants have been able to do internal working to absorb that. But specifically on the state and local grants, this is where we're seeing the most significant reductions. So Preschool Promise was essentially flat funded, and the Student Investment Account and High School Success grants were both reduced by about $500,000 total. We have our student success grants. Those were also reduced from 50 to 75%, and then outdoor school was reduced by 20%. So coming into the school year, the general fund has basically been left to counterbalance those reductions unless the district wanted to do additional RIFs. In terms of the state and federal budget outlook, I'll start with the state budget. So we've had quite the development of events in the last 5 months. At the end of the long session, just as I think the state was watching federal developments, they actually left about $473 million unallocated. I can say from the education lens, we were really hoping to see increases in special ed funding, specifically through the high cost disability grant, but legislators paused making any decisions just because they weren't sure what the federal outlook would look like. In July, Federal House Resolution 1 reformed the federal tax code, and because of how the Oregon tax code is structured, it basically echoes what happens at a federal level. So in June, we had a $473 million unallocated budget that very quickly swung to be a $372 million budget shortfall. In response to that, Governor Kotek directed state agencies to prepare budget reduction scenarios. This is a common exercise, except for some reason we just started hearing more about it because of most likely of the changes that HR 1 caused. And so ODE has spent the time to specifically prepare several scenarios. One is the Oregon Department of Ed reduction. That's specifically that department's budget. They've also been asked to prepare scenarios addressing the state school fund because those are two different budget bills and are treated separately, although there is some intertwining. The state school fund specifically, the department has been asked to propose 0.5% increments, so 0.5%. And just if you were to look at our general purpose grant allocation, that's about $758,000 for Tigard-Tualatin if anything were to happen in terms of a state school fund reduction. So departments prepared their budget reduction scenarios and have started to submit them to the Legislative Fiscal Office, but then specifically today, agencies were presenting their plans to the Ways and Means Committee. And on Wednesday, we expect an updated revenue forecast. Admittedly, I'm not sure how much of that information relies on federal reporting. And since we're coming off of the government shutdown, it'll be interesting to see how much Oregon can actually speak to the revenue forecast and how much will be just based off of either old or really fresh information from the feds. So that's at least our state budget situation. So we'll have an update, of course, after Wednesday. So the federal budget is something we have all heard a lot about. We specifically just came out of the federal shutdown. This is related to the fiscal year 2026 budget, which in federal terms, it's the budget starting next July. So July 1st, it affects, our grant allocations beginning July 1st, 2026. To end the shutdown, there was a continuing resolution which funds the Department of Ed and all of those related programs through January 30th, 2026. And another condition of ending the shutdown was that all Department of Ed staff who are affected by the second RIF were reinstated to work. So those staff specifically support state education agencies, which then affect our flow through of funds. And so those approximately 460 staff manage $79 billion of funding. I wanted to share this slide because this is what the current scenarios are out there in terms of federal grants. And just an update from August, you can see that the Senate proposal on the right is the most bipartisan and maintains the most semblance of traditional federal funding. That is most to our district. Clearly, it's the most favorable, but as you can see, all grants except for Title I and IDEA are flat funded. Title I would increase by $50 million, which is the equivalent to 1/5 of 1%. And IDEA fares a little bit better at 1/3 of 1%. So with roll-up costs, it's basically reduced funding for us, or we would be in a deficit position in those grants for 26, 27. So so we will continue to monitor grant developments, and our directors are already looking at scenarios for those programs. So now we're going to talk about PERS, and I'll be referring to that slide I shared earlier. So I just wanted to talk about how PERS works. It is the pension plan for state employees, and it provides a monthly benefit to retirees. Specifically, retirees have a pension benefit that's calculated based off of their years of service, their benefit rate. So Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees have a higher benefit rate than Tier 3, and then those employees' final average salaries. Those benefits are funded by two things, primarily employer contributions and then investment earnings. So those employer contributions are invested. Typically, that fund grows, and that can help offset the cost of employer contributions. So to put it another way, employer contributions are calculated based off of actuarial valuations. And what it's looking at is an employer's retirement commitment to its retirees. And that, again, is based off of payroll growth and if a district has a side account. Side accounts work well when a district either borrows money or takes cash savings and gives it to PERS with the expectation that PERS can invest those funds at a rate that beats the growth of the actuarial valuation and the debt that the employer is paying. So we're going to talk quite a bit about employer rates, which is that contribution portion. So this is the slide I shared earlier, and I just wanted to clarify or be clear that this is only general fund, that as we saw about a $2.8 million increase in PERS from one year to the other, and that specifically is tied to employer rates. So there was some legislation in the long session because all school districts were seeing pretty high increases in employer rates based off of some missed investment performance in the prior biennium, plus just really high payroll growth. So a rate change of 2% for Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees and a 1.6% increase in rate caused the general fund to spend about $3 million more in a single year. This is what we're at least looking at for the 27-29 rates. So we'll be getting our advisory rates in December, but preliminary reports at the PERS meetings indicated that there really wouldn't be an increase in rates for school districts based off of the actuarial calculations and investment performances. When you hear that, though, that applies to the original rates that districts were provided, which were eventually relieved through legislation. So what you'll see is at the far left is our current rates of 25.65 for Tier 1, Tier 2, and 22.47% for OPSERP. The loss of rate relief is going to increase rates by 1.68%. And then the district is one of those districts that does have a side account. And currently we're getting a rate credit of 2.37%. That is going to expire just because we're at the end of the approximate 20 years of that side account benefit. So that means that our Tier 1, Tier 2 rates at a minimum will be 29.7%. OPSERP will be 26.52%. Those are total rate increases of 4.05%. So if you take a look at the expected total rate increase and you look at what we came into this year, that $3 million was only because of a 2% increase at Tier 1, Tier 2. So that change going into the 27-28 school year could very well be double. And just for demonstrative purposes, this might look familiar because I showed this last year when we were looking at our rates prior to getting rate relief through the legislature. So again, we have our revised rates compared to our estimated rates. Right now, we have $102 million in wages that are eligible for PERS. At our current rates, we're paying $23.7 million total. And with those new rates, in 2 years, if payroll stayed exactly the same, which just given that we have steps and other components of negotiations, that's unlikely. But if that $102 million were to remain exactly the same, we would be looking at $27.9 million for our employer rate, which is an additional $4 million in a single year. So, yeah, it's school districts flock together in terms of the PERS employer rate. The only thing that a school district can do to differentiate itself is to create a side account. And again, sorry, I had some animation there. So that just brings us to not only planning for 26, 27, but really the long game is looking at the 27, 29 legislative session. So sadly, this slide is mostly the same from what I shared last year, where there's recent reports that for the first time, Oregon's been able to fund schools at the quality education model. But how that has actually happened is kind of subject to debate. We continue to grapple with some unfunded mandates from prior legislative sessions. That includes unemployment for classified workers, unemployment potentially for striking workers, and paid family medical leave. And like I mentioned before, we really wanted to try to do something to help offset high-cost special education, but just there wasn't any room at the end of the session to address that. We continue to face inflationary factors for most goods and services. And to Vice Chair Urban's point, we're also looking at implementing Senate Bill 141, and there may be further mandates that end up costing districts that, I know are tied to that increased funding, but there's a lot of layers to how that actually plays out. So I know I referenced the 27-29 session. We're just going to continue to advocate for schools and provide transparency related to our financial situation. We'll have community budget work groups again this spring. And again, just starting conversations early. All school districts are really relying on the legislature to do something with PERS. I know we faced significant reform when we passed the Student Success Act, but just again, the PERS feels like sometimes that one thing we have very little control over. So with that is sums up the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions, comments?
I just really appreciate all the information that you give us throughout the year and all the preparation that we have for the conversations that we need to have throughout the year. And whatever information that is really timely for us to know. So thank you.
giving a moment. So I would, like I have questions, but it's the questions that we all don't know the answers to yet. So, so I will not ask those. A couple of things that you kind of reminded me in your slides, which by the way, to absolutely plus one everything that Director Miles said. I mean, really, and I think we've said this the last couple of, like, since you've been here, it is so helpful. And I mean, it's incredibly valuable to have these consistent sort of updates in the format that you have that's really going, especially in these last couple of years where there's been wild things happening, but just to have that consistent sort of understanding of what's going on and all the moving pieces, because this isn't, you know, public education is not where you like set a corporation's budget and it kind of stays fixed. I mean, there are so many moving parts and variables that I appreciate all of those timely updates. And, you know, one thing that reminded me, one of your slides was, I did get an update that there are a ton of hearings happening this week in Salem. So outdoor school is one of them, the accountability implementation update, the tax reforms, the reduction options for the Department of Ed, were all sort of are happening today and tomorrow. And so I think as we kind of get projections and those hearings happen, because one of the things that was talked about during it might have been I don't know which meeting it was, but they are potentially looking at, Oregon in the past has uncoupled from the federal tax code. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that would be interesting, you know, depending on how all that plays out, and I'm sure we won't, is what that would look like then to kind of divorce ourselves from that for a time being. Because to your point, when it is directly tied to the federal tax code, things get really wonky really fast. So all that to say, this is incredible work, and it's hard when you're trying to I'm sure things are different today than they were when you made the slideshow probably earlier today. So I really appreciate all the time and work that you and your team put into putting these together, because I think it's incredibly valuable to us and to the community to kind of see. It's not just like a random end game at the budget committee hearings at the end of the year. Like we have that whole transparent process throughout, which I think is really invaluable. I'm going to give one more moment for colleagues. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And next we have first reading of some board policies with Director Reed.
All right, good evening, board, student representatives, and everyone in attendance. We have a few policies that are been submitted to the board tonight for first readings. And so the first one is going to take some discussion. This is one that's being brought back because we need to make a decision on the bracketed language. So we are looking for the board to provide some recommendation on that language. So if you open up board policy BHD, board member stipends and reimbursement, you can see the highlighted portion there. And there needs to be made a decision between the two sentences that are being offered up as possible changes to this board policy. So the amount of the stipend is limited to the amount included in the budget, or the stipend amount will be approved by resolution of the board. We need to make a decision on those two. So we're looking for recommendations.
I'll weigh in here. A couple of things about this policy. So there's been a lot of talk between a lot of people and the Oregon Government Ethics Commission about the ethical dilemma that adopting this policy contains, and there's been a lot of back and forth. It is okay for us to adopt this policy. In doing so, we all need to declare a potential conflict of interest when we adopt the policy. as you all know, a potential conflict of interest does not prevent us from talking about or voting on the policy. Also, voting on this policy does not mean that we automatically take the stipend. It just means that the district has a policy that any current or future board could take the stipend. It does not obligate us to do so. And so the discussion here would be about, does the policy say that it would be, that the amount of money would be put in the budget, or would the stipend amount be adopted by resolution, which would be individual resolutions, because we could not adopt a resolution for the whole board. It would have to be individual, because at the point at which the board goes to determine what amount goes to each person, then we have an actual conflict of interest. However, we can all vote on that. So if it's in the budget, we all will have to declare if we choose to take the stipend. Any board who takes the stipend would have to declare an actual conflict of interest, but then can vote on the budget. If the resolution is taken, and another district did this, Portland Public Schools did it, and they did it by resolution. Then they each have to have a separate resolution, and everybody but the board member votes on that resolution. That's complicated, and again, nothing obligates us to take the policy. Having the policy does not obligate us to take it. It does not mean that we have, but that's the process that we have to follow. So in choosing this language, it just chooses what process we would choose to follow or put in the policy that would be followed. It's
Yes,
clear as
you,
mud.
you said that better than I would have. Yeah, so I also talked with the OSBA policy person on this because, and this came up in one of the sessions, this specifically, and to Director Miles's point, it will just lay dormant. So whichever way we choose, we're not putting in a dollar amount. We're not saying we're going to enact it or invoke it. Again, we can adopt it and nothing will happen with it, but it will be there again for present or future boards. And in the past, we haven't done this because we have kind of decided that, especially in financial, kind of how we are financially as a district and world, kind of, we weren't going to opt to do that. So even if we adopted that, that wouldn't mean that we have to do that. So my sense would be the resolution way. Would you have the other way?
I would, so for me, I think the budget way is the easier way to do it. Because then you're just building it into the budget, and then you don't have to do individual resolutions. You just put it in the budget, and then you just vote on the budget. I mean, there's no one right way to do it. Also, if we talk about it tonight, we're just coming to consensus, and
We're not voting. Yeah,
we're not
doing
voting
yeah.
on that.
And I think my piece was worrying about getting to the budget piece with the potential conflict of interest in there. If we had to, like, that piece just got me a little bit.
I think what we would have to do, though, if we did it by resolution, we would have to do the resolution, if we did it by budget, then we're just doing it once.
Versus 5
If we did it by resolution, then we're doing a resolution and then asking for it to be put in the budget after that. Then, if we do it by budget, then it's just like there's the expectation that we built in the budget, and then we're just voting on the budget.
Thanks,
But
Spencer.
doesn't that look like, if we're doing it in the budget, isn't that then a standing item and it looks like we're taking the stipend?
We would be taking the stipend if it was in the budget. We would not put it in the budget if we weren't going to take it.
So we could adopt the policy saying that if this were to become an active policy, that would be the process that we would take.
Right.
We aren't determining that as the budget. Like if we choose, it's built into the budget, we adopt the policy, but we are not we are not sort of invoking that policy. We are not during this budget season or next going to be building that into the budget. That would only happen if we opted to take a stipend.
Right. We would not build it into the budget if we did not intend to take it.
Yeah.
Right. in that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And doing it by resolution means that each year we would have to do a new resolution, or okay.
And each year we'd have to declare each budget season. So either way, we'd have to do something yearly or
Yes.
annually.
Yes.
I guess I just don't understand. Like, to me, it seems like if we do the resolution way, right, then we're we would declare that we would take a stipend, and then it would get built into the budget. But if we say that it's going to be built into the budget, and each year we're going to have to declare a conflict of interest because it's built in per policy, even if we're not taking a
We will
stipend.
have to declare a conflict of interest no matter what.
Okay.
And we won't need to do resolutions if we're not taking
Right.
stipends. That would only come, either one of those would come into play
Right.
once we opted for a stipend.
And I will say, I should have said this in the beginning. I'm not an attorney. I can't provide legal advice, which is something I say like 12 times a day. If we end up having questions on this that become legal in nature, we should seek an attorney's advice.
Director
Okay.
Weston.
So I believe some districts have done it where they've declared a potential, not a conflict of interest, but a potential conflict of interest. And then some of them did it where they voted for each director and pertaining to that director, you can that person can recuse themselves. They can vote for that stipend, then they vote for the other director, that director recuses themselves, and they kind of go in a circle. But I don't think you would have to do it annually. I think you would vote to have a stipend, index it to inflation, for example, or have a formula, and then it's part of your budget. And then you would vote on your budget. Perhaps that would have a potential conflict of interest as well, declared. But I'm actually skeptical that you'd vote on it annually.
So you would vote on it. If you're going to build it into the budget is voted on annually. So in every year that you were going to build it into the budget, because you vote on the budget annually, you would have to vote on it. So
Agreed. I just don't think you'd vote like in a circle to add it annually. You'd just have it in the budget and vote on the budget.
only if we do the resolution. So if we do the resolution as you were describing, where everybody abstains, where everybody else is voting on somebody else's resolution, then you're still having to declare a conflict when you vote on the budget, right? Because it's in the budget. But if you just work it into the budget, then you declare the conflict and you're voting on the budget. But you have to do that annually because you're either putting it in the budget. If you put it in the budget annually,
Then every year.
and then every year
you would have that potential conflict of interest.
it's the actual.
I mean,
Yeah.
after that, yes.
Every year you have an actual conflict of interest. The only time you have a potential conflict of interest is right now when we're voting on the policy, because you don't have to vote on the policy annually. But every year that you put it in the budget, you would have an actual conflict of interest. Is my non-legal understanding. Again, not an attorney.
What about like, for example, a city council or state legislature? Are they declaring an actual conflict of interest?
I have no idea about any other governmental agency.
I think that this probably requires us to consult somebody else.
Coordinate that for you.
Yeah.
So am I hearing that we're gonna
Table.
abstain from moving forward and hold this off until consultation can be made?
Yeah. I think
Okay,
that's a good idea.
and we will move forward in that direction.
And can we make clear that we're currently not taking any stipends, especially given our budgetary constraints?
Yeah, because yes, and we haven't adopted that policy, so but correct, yes, for clarity, we have not adopted that policy in the past. We haven't been doing that in the past since legislative said that we could, and we have opted not to ever take stipends for this TTSD board.
Thank you.
And for the purpose of clarity, that is to determine what happens in the case of whether you do a resolution or an adoption on the board policy. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and move forward to our next policy, which is IIA, instructional materials. Are there any questions around this one? There was changes in the new provisions under Senate Bill 1098 that asked for some shifts in the policy. Are there any questions on this one? All right. Hearing and seeing none, those are all the policies that we have for this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will move to our first action item, which is OSBA election.
Thank you so much for that, Vice Chair. Let me grab my resolution here. So it's at that time of the year that OSBA is having its elections for board members, and we have been or asked to nominate here or to vote on the nominees that were presented in the ballot. We are being asked to vote on, let's see, two board seats or positions, and then three legislative policy committee positions. The two board of director positions are currently running unopposed. Position 16 is for our very own Tristan Irvin. Position 20 is Nancy Thomas. And then in the Legislative Policy Committee, we've got position 15. That's a contested position. So we've got TJ Johnson and Melissa Potter. Legislative Policy Committee position 16 is running unopposed. Becky Timchuk, I believe. Sorry for that. And then position 20 is our very own Crystal Weston. So we basically, as a board, get the chance to now put forth our or vote on who we're going to vote into those positions. Do we have any questions? And if we don't, I am ready to propose a motion.
And there is updated motion language that was sent, and Director Miles will be abstaining from these votes because she is an employee of OSBA. So I'll just put that out there. So we can entertain the first motion and then do that one and then the second.
So because, like I mentioned, some of the positions are being unopposed, we'll do this in two motions, like you said, Vice Chair. So I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School Board of Directors support Tristan Irvin for the OSBA Board of Directors, position 16, Nancy Thomas for the OSBA Board of Directors, position number 20, Becky Timchuk for OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, position 16, and Crystal Weston for the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, position number 20 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay.
All those, well, we have a motion made by, I'm like doing both jobs. Motion made by Director Jaimes, seconded by myself. Is there any discussion on the motion?
just have a procedural question. I'm wondering if we should potentially abstain?
If you abstain, then
There's,
there's
I don't think
quorum.
there's any conflict of interest.
Okay, just that was more my question. Sorry.
So with that, and because there's only 3 of us and I want to make sure that it's captured, I'll do a roll call. So Director Jaimes,
Yes.
Director Weston,
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find the mute button.
that's okay. And I am a yes. So that motion carries. And really quickly,
I should just say for the record that I abstain, so that Jane.
oh yeah, and 1 abstention. And then I will say that Melissa Potter, so this is, we haven't started the motion yet for the number 2, but she has already been serving with OSBA as an LPC member. She has been really involved with some of the county legislative roadshow stuff, that she has really been an active member in terms of sort of her district, her area, and really wants to continue elevating the voices of our students in Washington County. And so she really is hoping that she will be able to continue serving in that capacity. So that is my plug for her. So in the second motion, you would choose, and their information was all on the websites that were provided in the packet. So in this case, someone will choose to either support, and you will fill in the blank, Melissa Potter or TJ Johnson.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I will also like to say that I would support Melissa Potter. Don't know if there's any other discussion, but if there isn't any other discussion, then I would like to make a motion to move that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors support Melissa Potter for OSBA Legislative Policy Committee position number 15.
Oh, second.
Motion is made by Director Jaimes and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to individual votes. Director Jaimes?
Yes.
Director Weston?
Yes.
Director Miles?
I abstain.
And I am a yes. All right. Thank you so much, Director Jaimes.
You got it.
And we will get that ballot in. All right. We are on to our next action item, which is the Comprehensive Substance Use and Intervention Plan with Director Kinch and team.
Good evening, board. I'm here with Dr. Stave to share with you the Substance Use Prevention Intervention Plan. If you remember last month when we shared Division 22, we were not in compliance with this section. And just to remind us that the good news is that we are doing most of the things that you would see inside of a plan. We just hadn't compiled it all into a comprehensive plan, and we haven't had you approve it. And that is a requirement, is to have you approve it once or whenever we change it. So that was one area we weren't in compliance. And then the second one to highlight is we are required to train 100% of staff members on prevention and intervention of substance use. And we train our key staff, but now we will be training all staff. So I would like to introduce Dr. Stave, who is our mental health and wellness coordinator, and she is going to share the plan. I want to highlight also that it's a collaborative effort. It's between student services and teaching and learning, but she's taken the lead to bring everything together.
It would help if I turn it on. Okay. So, next slide, please. So the goal today is just to kind of review all the components of our substance use prevention plan and then gain board approval. So next slide, please. So the when we talk about substance use prevention, I think I want to start by grounding us in the fact that good substance use prevention is actually a lot broader than talking about just substance use. So prevention has a lot of layers, and we do so many things in TTSD to work on those prevention efforts. So it starts with the safe, supportive school community, with building strong partnerships with our staff, our family members, and most importantly, our students. And then in addition to that strong community, we're teaching healthy habits, social emotional skills, responsible and informed decision making. And all of those things kind of go into the comprehensive approach to substance use prevention, in addition to the pieces around health and substance use prevention education specifically. Next slide. So I wanted to start by kind of capturing a little bit of the data around what substance use looks like in our district and some of the other related factors. So our students, our 6th, 8th, and 11th graders complete the student health survey every 2 years. And last year's survey showed that across those all age ranges, 13% of our students reported any lifetime use of alcohol. 5.7% reported any lifetime marijuana use. And then 1.4% of our 6th graders reported any vapor tobacco use, whereas our 8th and 11th graders reported 8.2% reported that they used that. And those data points are just split out because the questions are asked differently at those age levels. So all of those, any use is more use than we would like to see amongst our student population, but all of those numbers are lower than the state average, which is really positive. Next slide. So in addition, I think it's really important to highlight some of the kind of broader mental health indicators. We hear our educators talk a lot about how our students have high mental health needs, but seeing it in data format, I think, is pretty powerful. So 10.6% of our students reported that they felt worried or stressed more than half of their days. And 18.1% reported that they felt worried or stressed nearly every day. So that means almost a third of our students are reporting stress the majority of the time, which is pretty substantial. And 24.9% reported feeling sad or hopeless nearly every day for two or more weeks. So when we think about the weight of what our kids are dealing with every day and how that might feed into substance use, I think this helps us kind of really see what our kids are dealing with when they're coming into our school buildings. On a positive side, though, 64.4% of our kids are reporting that they're happy to attend school, and 71% are reporting that they have a trusted adult at school. And then a high percentage of those kids that reported that they have a trusted adult also reported that they would go to that person for help if they needed it. So what that tells us is that although our kids are coming in with a lot of struggle and a lot of heavy stuff that they're carrying, the majority of them are seeing school as a safe place, right? And I think that really highlights the importance of intervention at the school level and the efforts that we put into this prevention work. Next slide. So the plan itself has several sections, and one of which it just highlights kind of the roles and responsibilities of various staff members in the plan. And I mostly want to highlight that for this work really spans across all the district. It spans across departments. We have district level folks working on ensuring that we're rolling out curriculum well and our programming. Our teachers are working at the classroom level and also referring students that they see have a need to our counselors and our social workers. And our counselors and social workers are providing that intervention and support. So really we're working on this prevention at all levels. Next slide. In terms of what instruction looks like, our substance use prevention curriculum falls within our health, our comprehensive health curriculum, and it aligns with state standards. It covers, emphasizes decision making, prevention, peer pressure, highlights the effects of substances. But then it also goes into some of those prevention pieces around mental health prevention, coping strategies. How are we really addressing the underlying driving causes of substance use? And then last year we started implementing the ODE's fentanyl and opioid supplemental lessons. And I just wanted to highlight that our teaching and learning folks took those lessons and got them implemented and in our classrooms so quickly once we received them from the state. They did a really phenomenal job of doing that and rolling that out. Next slide. And then in addition, we're doing a lot of SEL work in our classrooms, all the layers of embedded SEL lessons and social emotional skills that we're doing across the district. All of that is upstream prevention for substance use. And our schools are, doing substance use prevention assemblies, community events, the amazing work that our partners with Tigard Turns the Tide and Tualatin Together are doing with our students. There's so many layers of substance use prevention happening beyond what's happening in the classroom. And then in addition to that, we have all the layers of social emotional prevention that are happening, our affinity groups, clubs, family partnership nights. And so really, when we're thinking about substance use prevention, I mostly want to highlight that it's happening across the board. Next slide. The next section of the plan really just highlights the district policies, how they align with the OERs. Our district discipline framework outlines the substance use policies, the violation responses, and referral procedures. And our primary response process for substance use violations at school is our Teen Intervene program, which I can talk about. Next slide. The Teen Intervene program is provided, it's an evidence-based program that is used by the majority of the districts in Washington County. And Washington County provides the kind of ongoing PD for our staff that are leading that program. It's provided currently by our school social workers and is a screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment model. So they're meeting with students over a series of sessions and talking through what their use looks like, what are some of their triggers, what are some of those underlying mental health needs, and then getting them connected to care. One of the things that I think is really great about this program is that it often results in some sort of connection to additional care. So we find that students end up either continuing to work with our social workers for ongoing mental health skill building sessions, or they get referred to care in the community or treatment if needed. So it ends up being a really nice connection point where we actually are identifying students that had needs that we may not have identified otherwise. Next slide. And then in addition to the substance use specific intervention, we are doing a variety of different things to support student social and emotional health and well-being. So we have our counselors who are providing kind of the brief social emotional support, crisis support as needed, and connecting students to additional care when they're coming to them with need. And our social workers are, in addition to Teen Intervene, are providing mental health skill building where they're really, working on helping students build coping strategies, build healthy mechanisms for managing stress so that they're not turning to substances. And then in addition, when we have kids that have higher levels of need, they're being referred to community mental health providers, community treatment providers, et cetera. We also have really great partnerships with our school-based health centers and the behavioral health and substance use providers that work there. And so that has been a really, really helpful referral route for us when we have kids that have immediate needs. In addition to that, we have some community providers that we we have some that are in-house that are working with students in our buildings, and then we have others that we just partner with and connect students with when they have additional needs. Next slide. So the staff training component that Carol mentioned, we have been doing ongoing staff training for those that are, providing the Teen Intervene curriculum, for our educators who are delivering the health, substance use prevention, SEL curriculums. We also do the annual preventative trainings on related topics like suicide prevention, mandatory reporting, boundaries. All of those things are pieces of substance use prevention, but what we have missed is that just general overview of substance use prevention and the review of this plan. So we will be implementing that this year once this plan is approved, and that will happen during staff meetings, and then next year we will also be incorporating it into our annual classified staff trainings. In addition to that, we also, each building does have naloxone on site, and our nurses provide the training for that administration to the key staff who need to be trained. Next slide. So the next kind of final component of our plan is around communication and engagement. And so this is really an iterative process. This work, prevention work, has to be, it has to involve ongoing feedback. And so we are kind of continually getting feedback from the staff who are implementing programs, from students who are receiving intervention, from community members, our connection with local agencies, and that continues to inform what we're doing. And then in addition, we will be sharing out this plan to all staff via staff communication and newsletters, and with family and newsletters as well. And then the final piece of this is that the board approval is required for the plan, and then after that, it is just reviewed annually. It's the requirement. Next slide. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
I just wanted to comment. I was interested to hear the part about skill building and the behavioral health model. It's come to my attention recently that those modes of intervention are somewhat overused in Oregon, sometimes detrimentally, and I hope to see things like social norms and cognitive behavioral models potentially included as a focus area, and less reliance on a behavioral health model. And I just also want to remind our students, of course, the vast majority of our young people have healthy lifestyles and avoid substances. And so this work is really important, but also our young people are generally doing a fantastic job. And I want to point that excellence out so that they know, because they're the vast majority of them are doing a great job.
I want to say thank you for bringing us such a comprehensive plan on how we're going to correct what some of our shortcomings are. So I appreciate you bringing this to us and the intentionality behind it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I will echo what Director Jaime said, and I think it reminded me of when we were, and Director Kinch, you were part of that, when we were looking at new health and sexual education curriculum, and it was sort of like, well, it starts in kindergarten, but it doesn't, because you're looking at boundaries and healthy relationships, and what does that look like in kindergarten, like way downstream, and then you sort of build on those skills. And so this really reminded me of that same thing. So to your point, like, yeah, we're not doing substance abuse and prevention or intervention in elementary school necessarily, but we are, and that those sort of those stop gaps with behavioral health, with that sense of belonging, with how are we managing feelings, because if that many of our kiddos are still like, that's a very real, very prevalent state for a lot of our students, is feeling stressed. Then you have high cortisol level. Like, there's all those other things that kind of play into that. So I think it's really important to that in this plan is kind of built in to have all of those downstream, upstream prevention things. So those kids understand, when I'm in high school and I'm feeling this way, here are those other things that I can do instead of X, Y, or Z. And that's maybe why we're seeing, a less than what the state kind of reports in terms of substance abuse or use. And I really think I just wanted to call out that many students, and I don't have the slide up right now, felt that school was a safe place. And I think despite, to your point, despite feeling stressed or sad or hopeless, they also, and we're seeing chronic absentee levels coming down, and we're seeing, like, I think there's so much relational stuff happening within our district between families and students and teachers. We're seeing that in all these other places, which I think is just important to call out. And I also just wanted to call out one other piece, which was and it wasn't in the slideshow, but the kind of flow chart of all of the interventions. What it also shows is that we have this web of care. So it's not just when this thing happens, you go to like this person and it's sort of dealt with in this little silo, but really we're bringing in, if they need behavioral support, health support, if they need family support, if they need academic, like all those other pieces, those are all components in that flow chart, which I think is a huge service to all of our students. And I know that took a lot of work to put all that together, and I appreciate the care and thoughtful nature in which you created that plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is not a reports and discussion. I know it's good to like chat and then be done. Yes, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Tigard-Tualatin School District Substance Use Prevention and Intervention Plan.
Second.
Motion is made by Director Miles and seconded by Director Jaimes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Director Weston, I just didn't hear your vote.
I'm actually thinking. I'm gonna abstain. I'm just not sure about this.
So there's no. So it's a no.
I mean, if you'd rather have it be a no, I think I can abstain if I don't feel that I have enough information.
Okay. Any abstentions?
Sorry, I'm attempting to abstain. I am abstaining.
All right. Yeah, one abstention. And I am a yes vote. So 3 yeses and 1 abstention. All right, thank you so much. And next we have Director C with Resolution 252609.
Good evening again. We are on page 82 of the board packet for people following along. The city of Tigard approached the school district to present a proposal to the board to consider authorizing extending the city of Tigard's tax exemption for qualifying properties automatically. The explanatory memo provided an overview that the city of Tigard was the second municipality in the Portland metro area to adopt a affordable or nonprofit affordable housing tax exemption program in 1996. Since doing so, every application for an eligible project also comes to the school board for a separate approval. You might recall we did one probably in November of last year. Specifically, working with developers, having kind of a coordinated effort can help reduce some of the uncertainty and administrative work related with these exemptions. And overall, the district has approved, I believe, nearly every exemption that it's been approached with. So therefore, just looking to some of our neighbors, including Beaverton and Hillsborough school districts, the city of Tigard requested that the board consider authorizing them to extend exemptions for qualifying properties. And so therefore 252609 would grant such authority if approved.
And I would just add, and you said this, that we have historically always passed these exemptions, and in a time when there is an affordable housing crisis, any ways that we can sort of partner with the bigger community to help that, and also knowing, our neighboring districts are doing the same thing. I think this is a good thing to be doing.
And if you saw me typing, we have, I believe, 3 current projects which are receiving exemptions, and that equates for all taxes, including our permanent rate, local option, and bond. It's about $212,000 total that's exempted.
I move to approve Resolution 2526-09 to authorize the City of Tigard extend tax exemptions for qualifying properties.
Second.
Motion is made by Director Miles and seconded by Director Jaimes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a quorum vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, and we have come to our final action item of the evening, which is around the bond project manager's contract.
Good evening. Tonight we're bringing forth project managers contracts, as I've noted a couple of times in board updates, that we've been going through a process to get our construction management firms hired to do our projects for the bonds. We just recently wrapped that process up, kind of overview of the process. We had 4 current TTSD members that reviewed 10. We had 10 proposals that proposed on the RFP, 9 of which we actually scored. 1 was rejected because it did not meet the requirements of the RFP. We had 4 current TTSD employees do that evaluation, as well as 1 member of our bond oversight committee, 1 member from our architectural firm, and 1 previous TTSD, previous director of bond and operations. They went through the initial process of screening the proposals and identified 5 top scoring firms to bring into interview. Those firms were HMK Company, Cornerstone Management Group, Winaha Group, Gamut Project Solutions, and Turner and Townsend Heery. Because of some scheduling conflicts during the interviews, 2 of our scores had to drop off, so it left 5 that did the interview scoring. And the three highest firms on that, after that process with some reference checks, came down to HMK Company, Cornerstone Management Group, and the Winaha Group. Then the committee reviewed all of the individual project managers that were proposed during that process to identify which would be the best fit for the particular projects, and came up with Winaha Group was selected to be project manager on project number 1, which is Fowler Middle School. Cornerstone Management Group was selected for project managers role 2 through 4, which are the 2 cohorts of elementaries, are 2 and 3. And then 4 is playground, the playground projects and multiple miscellaneous projects. And then role number 5 was HMK's company was selected for role number 5, which was FF&E projects throughout the bond, across the course of the bond. We have been in negotiations and completed negotiations with Cornerstone Management Group and Winahar Group, and so we're bringing those forward tonight for approval. Negotiations with HMK Company are still moving forward, and we're anticipating we'll have those done and completed for the December 8th board meeting. So tonight, we're bringing forth to get approval for the contract award to Winahar Group and Cornerstone Management Group for construction management services for project managers role 1 through 4 in an amount not to exceed $3,728,298, broken down with Winahar Group receiving $1,033,874, and Cornerstone Management Group $2,694,424. And there's the supplementary and scoring matrices, and all of that are included in the board packet. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? I had one, but now I can't think of it. So we're going to let that one go. You can do motions.
I move to award a contract to Winahar Group for construction management services for 2025 bond capital projects in the amount of $1,033,874. I move to award a contract to Cornerstone Management Group for construction management services for 2025 bond capital projects in the amount of $2,694,424.
Second.
Motion is made by Director Miles and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. And with that, we are at the end of our meeting, and I will adjourn this meeting at 8:31 p.m. Have a great evening.